This video will show you how to do symbolizations in the Predicate Logic software. So you're going to click on the symbolizations page, and then you navigate to the chapter that you want. So let's say I'm going to do chapter 2, exercise 1. Let's just start 1A. So that exercise says 3 is prime. And we have the 3 is in a square bracket to indicate that that should be a lowercase letter. And the P for prime is in parentheses to indicate that that's a predicate. So we want to do capital. Now here, unlike in the propositional logic software, we actually do have to shift if we want a capital P. Because we also want to be able to make lowercase letters here. In this case, the next one we want to make is a lowercase t. And again, it tells us that that is the correct symbolization. So let's do a few more. So let's do the next one. The next one says some singular statements are negative. So some, that's an existential statement. So I'm going to need an existential quantifier. So that's, so I either want to click on this button for the backwards E, or I could do a hashtag. That's what I'm going to do. Or I could press the F5 function key if those worked, which they don't on my computer here, my daughter's computer that I'm working with. So an existential quantifier, and then I need a letter to stand for the variable. And I can use either X, W, X, Y, or Z. I'm going to use X. That's usually our go-to. And then we need punctuation for the rest of the statement, because well, let's do it without the punctuation. I'll explain what goes wrong. So suppose I just said there exists an X such that SX, X is a singular statement, and NX, X is a negative statement. So SX ampersand NX. Okay, so that says that's not well formed. And it's not, because we have a quantifier that is outside the scope. Sorry, we have a predicate with a variable that's outside the scope of the quantifier. So let's suppose this was NA. That would be wrong, but it's a well-formed formula, because as it was, right, this NX is outside of the scope of this quantifier, because this quantifier only applies to what is directly next to it. If I have NA, it's wrong, because that's not how you would symbolize this statement, but it's well formed, because here it doesn't need to be in the scope of the quantifier. It could be, and it would still be well formed. So I could put parentheses here. So it's still a well-formed formula. It's still wrong, but really I want this to be an X. And so now it's correct and it's well-formed, because here the quantifier applies to this. The scope of this quantifier is this whole statement, NX, SX, and NX, because of the parentheses. They put all of it within that scope of the quantifier. So that's really important. You generally need punctuation with quantified statements. Okay, let's do one more. Let's find a universal statement. Weird. Oh, okay. Those are later in the text. He deals with those later, so that's why I'm not seeing it. Okay, so let's look at Chapter 2, exercise 3A. Okay, so this says all who love are blind. So for every X, so there I want to do either click on this for all X here, or I could do the money symbol, or I could do F6. So I'm going to do the money symbol. For every X, if X loves, then X is blind. So LX, arrow, BX, close parenthesis. So that's how you do symbolizations. It gives you hints if you're wrong. So let's suppose I did BX, arrow, LX. Let's suppose I thought that would be in the other order. Again, it's not really helpful, but it kind of gives you a clue, more of a clue actually than the propositional logic one. So this formula is entailed by the sentence, but is not entailed by your symbolization. LA, arrow, BA. That's saying, put them in the other order, right? Now, if I mess it up in different ways, suppose I put an ampersand in there. Well, actually, right now I have something that is not a well-formed formula because I forgot to hit shift when I wrote the L. So let's fix that. Okay, so that's wrong. What kind of error message does it give me? Again, not super helpful, but what is helpful is it gives me the form and it goes, oh, right, I should have an arrow, which is going to be your go-to connector for universal statements. There are some universal statements that don't have an arrow connecting the different predicates, but they're fairly rare and sort of edge cases, usually involving restricted domains. That's when you get that, is usually when so in the module where we deal with restricted domains, we will see that, but otherwise not so much. You might see more complicated statements where, like, perhaps there are two predicates in the antecedent or more than one predicate in the consequent, things could get complicated that way.